Does your cake come out looking like this or like this? I will give you 6 reasons why this happens and ways to fix it. A cake sinking in the middle is one of the most frustrating baking problems, and it usually happens due to the following reasons. The very first one is opening the oven door too early. Yes, you heard me right. Cakes rely on hot air to rise properly, and if you open the oven door before the cake is fully set, a rush of cold air can interrupt the baking process, causing the structure to collapse in the middle. This is especially common with sponge cakes, chiffon cakes, even chocolate cakes, which are quite delicate and they rely on steam to rise. So, the next one is oven temperature is too low or fluctuating. If your oven temperature isn't hot enough, the cake won't bake properly and will stay undercooked in the middle while the edges set. The third one is overmixing the batter. Of course, overmixing incorporates too much air, which makes the cake to rise too quickly. However, as the cake bakes, the air bubbles burst and the center collapses. And this is common in cakes that rely on whisked egg whites, such as the chiffon cake or the angel food cake, where too much air can make the structure unstable. The fourth one is too much leavening agents. When I say leavening agents, I mean baking powder and baking soda. Using too much baking powder or baking soda causes the cake to rise rapidly at first, but without enough structure to support it. The middle collapses even before it is fully baked. Baking powder and soda creates carbon dioxide gas, and an excess can lead to weak cake structure. Number 5, on the baking the cake. So removing the cake too early. If the cake isn't fully baked, the center won't have enough structure to hold itself up. And as the cake on the cooked batter cools down, it deflates. This happens when you rely only on baking time rather than actually testing whether the cake is done or not. The last one is using incorrect pan size. Using a smaller pan that the recipe suggests results in a thicker batter layer, requiring a longer baking time. If the cake center isn't baked thoroughly before the edge is set, the middle will definitely sink. So here are those reasons, and these are the ways how you can fix them or prevent the cake from sinking. The first one I mentioned about the opening the oven too early. What can you do? Do not open your oven door for at least 20 to 25 minutes after putting the cake in. If it is necessary, open it only towards the end of the baking when the structure is already set. The second point that I mentioned about the cake oven temperature is please preheat the oven before placing your cake inside. Another thing you can do is to use an oven thermometer to check if your oven runs too hot or too cold. If your oven has hot spots, rotate the cake only after 3/4 of the baking time to avoid deflation. Remember. Then the third one about butter mixing, mix your butter properly. Do not overmix. Cream butter and sugar properly if the recipe calls for it. But once the flour is added, mix just until well combined. If the recipe requires whipped egg white, fold them in gently instead of overmixing. The fourth one is use the right amount of baking soda and baking powder. Follow your recipe exactly. Don't eyeball it. As a general rule, use 1 teaspoon of baking powder per 1 cup of flour, unless your recipe says otherwise. The fifth one is test for doneness before removing the cake. Our all-known way to do this is insert a toothpick or a skewer into the center of the cake. If it comes out clean or with a few crumbs, the cake is ready. Let's lightly press the cake surface. If it bounces back, then it's done. If it stays indented, it needs more baking time. The last but not the least is use the correct pan size. Follow the recipe's recommended pan size to ensure even baking. If you must use a smaller pan, lower the oven temperature slightly and bake for a longer time. And then bake at the right temperature and the right time. Most cakes bake well between 160 degrees Celsius to 175 degrees Celsius. And if you're using a convection oven, reduce the temperature by about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 10 degrees Celsius. And if this messages that I have given is of a huge solution or a huge impact or has given out a lot of information, you appreciate it, why don't you click the like, the share, and the follow button? Till I come your way again with another baking fix. Stay well and stay safe. Keep baking.